All right, moving into Saturday, and to me, I think this is the FCS game of the week. I'm glad they put it on Saturday. A nice warm-up for the Army-Navy game, which I'm absolutely stoked for. Undefeated Holy Cross taking on South Dakota State, the consensus number one throughout the FCS right now. They are currently a 15.5-point favorite, Steve. I know that you are huge on Holy Cross here. Can the upset happen? That's what I want to know. Is it possible? Do you think it will happen? We're going to get this game at noon on ESPN and ESPN+.
It's certainly possible. Holy Cross Holy Cross is a lot like TCU. They just find ways to win games. They do what it takes, whether it be big defensive stops. And again, they've had some problems with some leaky defensive efforts from time to time. But again, they went 12-0. They beat University of Buffalo. They've won 20 of their last 21 games. And I think the Crusaders sort of have a chip on their shoulder because I think they really feel they have not gotten the respect that they deserve. And I agree, they should have been seated higher than 8. As many great teams that we've talked about here, Holy Cross should have been seated higher. I think that reseeding of number 6 in the NCAA.com article, I think that's about right. I might have even gone as high as 5 because they just, you talked about Matt Sluka earlier. He's a 1,000-yard rusher. They grind out 243 yards a game. South Dakota State has fared well against mobile quarterback. We just talked about Cam Miller at North Dakota State, and they kept him relatively contained as much as you can when they beat them to take over the number 1 ranking in the country. I really like the Jackrabbits offensive line. I like their defensive front 4, and I like their linebacking core. I think that they're just going to bend and not break in a lot of situations where maybe the Crusaders have been used to their opponents breaking because of the pressure that they can bring, on the run game. It'll be interesting to see if they elect to try to throw. Sluka has a pretty good arm. He's relatively accurate, but again, his main weapon is his legs. When you rush for 1,000 yards and you're a quarterback, you're in rarefied air there. I'm going to go South Dakota State on this one. They squashed Delaware.
Put the hurt on Delaware.
Yeah, they just gave them no breathing room. And honestly, I want to say their first field goal was based on a turnover mistake. Then they had another field goal, so all 6 points pretty much happened in the first half. And Delaware is no stranger to FCS playoff games. So the coaching staff, even the entire roster, they've been there. So it's not a matter of them being, overwhelmed by the bright lights or whatever. South Dakota State just shut them down. They beat them by 36. So that tells me that they have enough on the defensive end to maybe keep the Crusaders in check to the point where, even though I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, you're going to see probably the 2 best coached teams in these playoffs. They're very disciplined teams. But I'm going to go with South Dakota State in this one. As much as it breaks my heart because I've been screaming about Holy Cross all season, I really think South Dakota State is just too much.
I think if Holy Cross wants to have a chance to win this game, their game plan has to be creative because just like we mentioned last week, they only threw 6 passing attempts. Well, South Dakota State, in that complete massacre against Delaware, they held Delaware to 64 yards rushing on 37 attempts. That's under 2 yards per carry. Now, I think that we will see some better luck of Holy Cross, but that's just something to keep in mind in what that could come for the Crusaders here. I think they got to be creative. They probably have to throw the ball more than 6 times, and they have to be efficient when they do so. I also think that they are going to have to win the turnover battle. We saw that last week against New Hampshire. They were +4 in turnover margin. They had 5 turnovers against New Hampshire. against New Hampshire. So that's something that they must do. And that's something that South Dakota State is very good at not letting happen. They only had one turnover in the game against Delaware. Their quarterback's only thrown 5 picks all year. So they're going to have to really be creative and really make some mistakes that we haven't seen happen too much from the Jackrabbits. I'm with you. I think South Dakota State wins this game, but I do think it is going to be the game of the week. I'm really interested in this one. Let us know your thoughts about all the games we've covered in this one, as the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs are coming at you Friday and Saturday. It's going to be fantastic. We're looking forward to it. We will recap this here on Monday before we get going into the semifinals and the finals. This is where it's at, folks. We got FCS playoffs coming at you. Let us know your thoughts in the comment description below. Hit like and subscribe while you're there. And thanks for watching SlasherU.